Just to round out the whole picture, Tommy's going to argue the case for reinventing the wheel.
Nice way to put it.
None of the above.
Okay. So, okay, first of all, I don't want to pretend that I think this is a one-size-fits-all answer either. All these things, all these solutions have, pros and cons, as we've seen. Everyone has something they do better than others. Certainly, I don't think that if you wanted to do something quickly, or if you're a beginner, that starting from scratch is necessarily the way to go. But I do think it is the better end goal. And I'll probably get into that a little bit later, maybe. But mostly, I just want to. My name is TommyCarlos Williams. I'm one of the committers to Apache Cordova project, so that's where my love is. I'm also I work for a company that actually builds a Cordova app, an open source Cordova app, and we went through the rigmarole of do we choose a framework, which one do we choose, which one do we go with. In the end, we just ditched it all, and I started from scratch, from a blank piece of file, and I've been much happier ever since. And there's a few reasons for that. The first reason is that I couldn't convince anybody at Kendo to let me have it open source. And our app is open source, so that would have been my first port of call, but that failed. So with that out of the way, I had to start out from scratch because I tried some other ones and they were terrible. So it really comes down to the fact that it's not as hard as you think it is. Particularly if you have decent, web and CSS skills, it's really not as hard as people think it is. Everyone gets so scared, where would I start? How would I get started on this doing it from scratch? It's really not as hard as you think. It's HTML markup like any other single page app. You need to set some base CSS for mobile, like you would at any other. Most of these other ones need that too. You need to make your pages fit the screen, so they take up the whole screen. Any fixed items like nav bars and tab bars, you need to just set them up properly with the CSS and scroll the stuff in the middle. And this accounts for most apps. It's not just, what I'm going to show you today is certainly not going to cover all the amazing things these other frameworks can do, but it will cover what most people need to do, and then the rest of it can just be done just as easily. You have to admit, the other frameworks are just CSS too, and JavaScript too. They're not doing anything magical with mystical fairy dust. So they're just doing this too. So if you can do it yourself, you'll end up with just the bits you want and just the way that you want for your app. And of course, navigation without transitions and forms, which I'm totally not going to touch today. Okay, so meta tags, straight up, just like most other mobile apps, you're going to have to set up the meta tags to handle the viewport. Pretty straightforward. In fact, I'll just go to my little demo bit. And yeah, just a simple base for some CSS. It's just an example. I sort of cooked up an example today in a couple of hours to sort of give an example of what I'm talking about. And this is just the very basic thing. Actually, obviously, you can see it does absolutely nothing. It's incredibly exciting. But it's just basically has some sane defaults for an app. It just sets up fonts and some things like stopping it from doing the long press on a picture to try to save it and some other stuff like that. This is mostly geared towards obviously using it for Cordova rather than straight up web. Then I've got another one, which is like the app, which is this bit. It just basically, again, sets the container for your total app. And again, terribly exciting, does absolutely nothing. Okay, that's great. This is going really well. So the next bit is to have an actual page that you can actually put some data in. And this is basically just, again, it's literally just taking the page, it's making it a particular size on the screen. It's setting the in this case, it's setting the overflow to auto and scrolling touch to get scrolling on your container if you have more than stuff. And again, not terribly exciting, but at least it does something, right? So this one, we're starting to do something now. So we can see that all I've done is literally just those bits of code that you see in the slides. It's just, a few little classes of CSS. Again, it's not a very exciting app, and we're getting there though. And yeah, the only thing to note is that a page, actually, in my case, is slightly shorter than the screen because I'm leaving room for the nav bar, which in this case is just absolutely positioned top bar with a title in it, let's say. And so you end up with something like that. And now we're starting to see where I'm headed. Where I'm headed is towards not so much trying to fake the native environment for a particular device, but to try to create something that is mobile-centric and mobile-comfortable without trying to pander to a particular device. So, most people don't care whether you have the exact right back button or not for that device, as long as the app works and it does what they expected it to do. Nobody's complaining about the back button in any of the Google apps on iOS. They aren't doing that because nobody cares. They care if it's crap and it's slow, but they don't care if it's the wrong back button, as long as it doesn't look like, pants. But, sorry, great terms. So obviously a nav bar is kind of useless without some buttons in it. Again, these are just, little 44 pix divs with some absolute positioning, maybe a little bit of centering for the content. Obviously, I didn't have room for the right and left generic style for the pulling it to the right and left, but it was literally just a left and a right, for that particular thing. And then you get your lovely little buttons, and they don't do anything, but there they are. They're styled up. So then you come into other buttons, and there's the left and right that I was talking about before. It just handles the borders and the sides and positions them. And again, this is just a straight up button. It doesn't look like an iOS button. It kind of looks a little bit like an Android button, actually, to be honest. But if you know CSS, you could easily put a gradient in that and make it look like an iOS button, or round the corners, or it's pretty straightforward, right? It's not really all that hard. It's not rocket science. It's not something that only a professional team of 20 people can do. And so you get your button, you got your basic button now. So now you got a button for your app. And it's really not that much CSS. It really isn't. And it's nothing different from when people had to hand code every bit of CSS to make their websites look like they wanted it to, a few years ago, before Twitter Bootstrap. And so, people used to have to push every pixel exactly where they wanted it in the old days, and this is not that much different. Scrolling, I say simple, and it's kind of a joke because it's only simple as long as you target relatively newish browsers in the mobile devices. Android 2 can't do CSS scrolling, so you have to use a library like iScroll and fall back to it using something like Modernizer to detect, feature detection and so on. But for modern browsers, for Android 3 Plus and for iOS 5 Plus, you can certainly use CSS scrolling, and you'll get a very native feeling scroll to your thing. I can actually whip this up in the simulator here. Where's my scroll? Other button, that'll do. Actually, that's got scrolliness. Nope, it doesn't. I'm a total liar. Yeah, so this has scrolling, and that's just CSS scrolling. It does the bounce when it's on iOS. It doesn't do the bounce when it's on Android because it's the native implementation from their browsers of their scrolling.
I have some corrections for you.
Oh yeah, no, please do. No, absolutely.
Not kinetic.
No. No, and listen, this is an important point too. I'm obviously breezing over a lot of the amazing work that the real frameworks do. Yeah. Well, actually, to be honest, we can scroll in the SpiderWork app. We can scroll 9,000 list items without me being very careful about the actual DOM I'm using, without even blinking on Android 4. On Android 2, your device might smoke. But yeah, it's a matter of picking exactly the right thing for what you're trying to do. If you're trying to achieve a particular thing and you don't care about supporting older Android devices, or you don't care about that, then scrolling's not a problem. To be honest, from one of my other slides, and which I stole from someone else entirely again, scrolling is the enemy anyway. There's almost no good way to do it, especially with a lot of items. It's really better if you can think of a better way to set your app up so that you don't have to. You'll be much happier, and then you'll have a lot more hair at the end of your development life then. So this is just straight up simple page navigation. It just basically sets one of your whichever page you're about to translate to be 100% to the right, and any page that has been translated from to 100% to the left, and sets a duration of 200 milliseconds, right? So it's pretty straightforward. It's also very WebKit centric, obviously, in this particular case, because I just whipped this up. But again, you end up with being able to scroll to the next page with a native transition. Go.
How long up to this stage would that have taken?
I did the whole thing in 2 hours
Okay.
this morning.
Yep.
Then I wrote the slides. The slides took longer than the app.
Okay, good.
And that's only because I just started using Bespoke JS and I've never used it before, so, and I hate Jade, so. So that was an adventure in its own. But yeah, it really didn't take that long. It took about 2 hours. But having said that, obviously I build an app for a living and I've, done this before. So a lot of this stuff is just boilerplate that's already in my head. But I had to figure it out the first time too, and it didn't really take all that long. What happened when we decided not to use a framework, actually, as an example, we decided not to use a framework. I said to myself, well, I've got 6 days. I have almost a week till my next dev call with my boss. All right, I've been sitting here trying to find a framework. I'm going to give myself those 6 days to see if I can get the app up to where it already was using one of those previous frameworks that had failed me in those 6 days from scratch. And I got it done in 4. So in 4 days, I don't think I'm very good at CSS, but in 4 days I got an app that looks like an Android app from nothing. I mean, the structure of the pages was already there. We used Backbone for our actual, managing, DOM and stuff. But I built the actual UI in only a few days from scratch, not being very good at CSS.
Did you actually sleep during that time?
What's that, sorry?
Did you sleep during that time?
A little. Not as much as I'd like, but I have 2 kids, so really it's much of a muchness. It's not that much different. Yeah. So here's some basic JavaScript. This is stolen from a guy named Christopher Conrad's, who's an amazing blog about PhoneGap applications. All it really does is just picks the 2. I might also say that my 2 hours today, some of that time was the fact that I handicapped myself by not using JQuery, and I'm not a JQuery guy. I wanted to see if I could do it completely vanilla. So it probably would have taken me an hour if I didn't have to figure out query selectors and shit. So basically it just selects the IDs of the 2 pages, the one you're going to and the one you're going from, and just sets up the transition just by adding some classes to it. And that's, as I say, you end up with this, that thing we just saw, but of course, now what? So yeah, so you wire it up to a button, which is what that actually was. This one here, this is the one with the button wired up. Yeah, there, the button. Problem, of course, now is that, as I alluded to before, now you're stuck, right? Sorry, first, before I get to that, there's a 300 millisecond delay in WebKit if you just use a click event. You just have to avoid that either using Zepto or FastClick or use a touch event instead. It's annoying, and it's one of the reasons why people think web apps are slow, is because they feel like when they click something, it takes a little while before something happens. That's why. Most of the frameworks already have lovely ways of working around it. All you have to do is either find one of those ways of working around it by using Zepto or something, or just do it yourself using touch end. What I was trying to show before was, now you're stuck, right, in my stupid app. So now I got my stupid app, and I've gone to a page, and I can't get back.
Great page.
Yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? Isn't this a great app? So anyway, so now we got a page. So instead now, we'll use another button to go back, right? Now this can be wired up to the back button on Android or to any other button you want, but it's not very smart. It still just pushes you back to a previous page that you know about. So in this case, where are we? Here, we go to our second page. We got a button that can take us back to our first page. And again, it's just using those same transitions that you had before, but it's not very smart. So the next trick is to try to wire up a back button like you have in iOS, or to do something like this using capturing the event in the in PhoneGap, for instance, for the Android back button. And this just basically does the same thing again. It stores a previous page to know as you're traversing where it is, bonus points. Use an array and pop and push them off that, or use the history stack. And again, it's just a matter of, now when I go to my second page, I can go back using a back button. Obviously, this app is not terribly clever, and it's not terribly pretty, but it didn't take me very long. And you can see that it wouldn't take very long to then add styles that you love to that, and you would still be looking at an app that you had built from the ground up with your styles and your look for your app. The trick with mobile apps is to build the app, is to build your app for your app, is to literally look at the constraints of what you're trying to achieve in your app and build the styles and the menus and the buttons that suit it. It's important to keep with a lot of the standard, motifs from mobile because, people know that and they expect it, but you don't need to match every single pixel. And I'm sure the screams of pain were heard around the world when Johnny Ive dropped iOS 7 on the people in JQ Touch and probably even Sencha and Kendo. No? You guys are ready? You ready?
We were ready 6 months before when that kind of deserved.
Oh yeah, right. See, nice to have friends, isn't it? But yeah, I think a lot of other people probably panicked when that happened because a lot of the HTML libraries, like they were made by smaller people that people might have been using, like Chocolate Chip or even JQ Touch, which has been struggling in recent years, is not going to get an iOS 7 look anytime soon.
JQ Touch is essential JavaScript.
Yeah, I know, but.
So that's
It's
why
the bastard.
flipping.
It's the bastard stepchild, isn't it? I mean, seriously, you guys kick it when you're bored and drunk. I mean, seriously, because nobody loves that thing
So far
anymore.
in the corner, you probably not.
Yeah. That's right. So yeah, so there's the end result of my ugly little app. But again, like I said, it only took 2 hours. Most apps take a lot more than 2 hours to build, and some of that time will be fighting with your framework if you're using a framework, and some of that time will be doing something in 10 seconds and going, wow, that looks amazing if you use a framework. There's pros and cons to everything. You might be able to just dump some stuff on the page and suddenly it's beautiful and that's amazing. And then you want to do something specific and it just fights you at every stage. In the end, is this faster than using Kendo UI or Sencha? Probably not. But the app will be exactly what you decide it to be in the end. For extra credit, yeah, side menus, like the drawers, which is really simple. It's just one simple animation of a div on top of another div. Navigating by the list, same thing, just wiring up the list instead of a button. Changing the title based on the current page. We use Backbone, so everything's a view, so we just manipulate everything that way. Modularization, like I said. Profit. But if you're scared of a full stack, like Kendo or JQ Mobile or Sencha Touch, there's some other options. There's some medium ground. Some of the best work in fast CSS lately has been from some people at Adobe working on Topcoat, which is a pure CSS UI library. It's very mobile friendly. It also has desktop version. And it's built basically for speed. That is their one single thing. They benchmark as they build. It's just CSS. It's not a lot of JavaScript to handle, manipulating the DOM and manipulating these widgets. But it does give you the base CSS to build, pretty buttons without having to know how to do all that stuff yourself. And it's very themable and it's very easy. And of course, everyone knows what Bootstrap is. And Bootstrap can be finagled into being useful for a mobile app too. Apparently, the new version 3 is much more mobile friendly, so it'd be interesting to see how that works using it to build mobile apps as well with, say, Cordova and so on. And thanks. That's it for me. Thank you very much. Any questions? Yes, questions, yes.
Is there anything you can share more about Android scrolling?
Android scrolling? Yeah, send money to a guy named Cubic in Italy and beg him to make iScroll amazing, because that's about your only hope at the moment still. iScroll or some of the other libraries where people have tried to achieve scrolling. I think the Financial Times, don't they have one as well?
Yeah.
I don't know, they have one of their own as well. I didn't find it to be any better than iScroll, and iScroll's constantly being updated, so I trust Cubic to get it right later on more than them, because they probably just did their thing and then dropped it and that's it. Bonuses for the Financial Times ones, it supports IE, whereas I'm not sure that iScroll did at iScroll 4, but iScroll 5 does, I believe, at least the mobile versions. And he is getting it much faster, but yeah. The fact of the matter is, the problem is that people are still shipping brand new phones with Android 2.3, and it's embarrassing, but it's something we're going to have to live with until they fix it. Android 2.3 has become the IE6 of mobile because it sticks around past its use-by date. Not because it's worse. I mean, obviously 2.2 was worse, 2.0 was worse, but 2.3 has stuck around long past its use-by date to the point where it's no longer welcome, but it's still here. And yeah, it's just something like IE6 that we're just going to have to contend with HTML5. And the other frameworks have to do that too. Like, you're using iScroll under the covers, or have you got your own? You got your own, right? Which is really good, and you do too, right? Yeah. Yeah, they're really good. Like both Kendo and Sencha can scroll for days. Done a very good job, as long as you're careful. Yeah, you're careful. Well, as long as you infinite scroll where you're not loading everything, or you are careful about what you're scrolling. I mean, you could bring them to their knees with bad DOM too. Unfortunately, it's just, especially in Android 2, it's hard to get around that. Unfortunately, scrolling is the enemy.
We say don't type more than 10,000 items in your
Yeah.
list for that reason. I mean, you can
But if you started adding, you
after
know,
that, but that's
box
all
shadow and
wavering.
stuff to Android,
Yeah.
or gradients, you know, you're gonna
Yeah.
cripple it no matter how good your
Oh,
library
that's
is.
right. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a matter of being careful about what you scroll, first of all, and how much you scroll, and if you start to do a lot of scrolling in your app, maybe rethink it. It's a little hard for us. We're file system based. We're actually viewing a file system, so it's a little hard to get around that. There's going to be scrolling.
That's where I just use the iframe hack.
Yeah, well, I'd like to talk to you about that actually, very much, because anything that'll make scrolling better for us would be one of the greatest things in my life, you know. Or if you could just convince my boss to drop Android 2.3 support, that'd be even better. Actually. Sorry, more questions. Oh, the same person. Sorry.
I tried the app you mentioned like a couple of sessions earlier, the Spider.
Oh, Spider Oak, yeah.
Yeah, I tried it on my mobile and
On Android or in iOS?
on Android.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, the scaling is also very painful.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, I have a folder of like 40, 50 files.
40 or 50?
40, 50
What's
files.
what's your device? So just out of curiosity.
A Sony Xperia S.
Is that?
I think it is an older Android.
Oh, is it?
It's Android 4.
Is it?
Is it?
Yeah. Did you use a plugin on that? Or?
No, it's just using CSS scrolling. It's literally using
Is that right?
overflow touch.
Yeah, when I first got my phone, the scoring is fine. But once I updated to the latest, they seem to disable some kind of acceleration thing.
Updates the latest version of Chrome. Is that what you're using?
No, because I'm doing a hybrid app.
Yeah, it's a hybrid app.
Uses the-
It uses the web view. It's just a matter of whether or not Sony's neutered the web view or not. I love Android so much. Awesome. No, I'm lying. I don't know. I would love to see it if you got it here tonight and I could have a look. That would make me happy to have a look. It would not make me happy, it would make me very sad, but at least I could have a look and see what you mean. Because we actually are still trying to figure that out for Android 2, and we've actually had to limit the number of items you can actually even display at a time. For us, it just comes down to a Venn diagram of who has Android 2.3 on one side and who has more than 100 items on the other. You know, where they cross in the middle, there's going to be pain. So far, there hasn't been any. We got plenty of nice one-star reviews for not being able to upload, even though we're encrypted and we couldn't possibly without some serious JavaScript. But we got no one-star reviews for our scrolling, so we'll see. We'll just do the best we can. Anybody else? Right.
My experience is that there's only so much you can do in a single threaded environment.
Yeah. I mean, all you can do is clever hacks. You know what I mean? Like, I had time constraints. I gave myself about 2 weeks to try to think of something clever, and I couldn't. So basically, we ended up with bad scrolling on Android 2.
Considering Sencha Touch and Kendo UI, they must have better use models, which is better for which, you know, which one do you lean towards the one and towards the other? As an implementer.
Well, yeah, I always say have a thing for Kendo. I like Kendo UI very much, but that's because it uses HTML instead of being built from JavaScript and CSS. Do you know what I mean? They're actually, you're building. Is that still true that you're basically building a JavaScript application that then renders to HTML, or?
It is now, but in the next month we're releasing a markup version. of
Okay.
MVVM.
Well, that'd be interesting.
Binding to
That'd be interesting to look at. But that's one of the reasons why I love Kendo so much, is that it is markup based. And obviously, if if I could have gone to anybody at Telerik to release mobile in the same way that they do the web one with a GPL3, a dual license, SpiderOak would be in Kendo, but I couldn't. So
You tried.
I tried. I had a good go, man. I emailed a bunch of people, but it didn't work. So yeah. More beer. Have some more beer. Then we license. Yeah. No, unfortunately we couldn't. So obviously I did it myself. But I've been very happy that I've done that. With the exception of scrolling, I've been much happier having not used a framework, to be honest.
So what would you say, though, like, if you had a quick look at both of the API manual is pretty extensive and pretty daunting when you look at it. When I looked at the initial before I got into this, I actually looked like Kendo UI because it seems a little bit more friendly for a start and someone getting into it. What's the comment on there? Like, which is the best to start in?
I'm the wrong person to ask. You might want to throw it out to the other guys as well, because obviously I have a super bias. I looked at Sencha very early on in my career in mobile and walked away and never looked back. So I don't really know Sencha at all. I have almost no experience with Sencha at all. Most of my experience has been with, as far as UI frameworks, has been Kendo, JQ Touch, a minor dalliance with Chocolate Chip trying to get it to work for us, but it didn't. And that's about it. So yeah, I don't really know. Kendo is absolutely kick-ass for prototyping. There's no question about it. I mean, especially, I don't know how you manage licensing with JSBin, but just being able to open up JSBin and dump in a Kendo instance and suddenly you're working on an app is phenomenal.
We just released JQuery. we copy each other all the time.
Yeah. But I mean, that's great though. I mean, that's great. And yeah, I mean, obviously I have personal preferences, and that's not necessarily, you look at that Facebook app and it's phenomenal, essential one. So
we have a Facebook equivalent app, which the Facebook app is good. The claim to fame we have is the photo booth app on Chromebook is ours. So if you use the Chromebook, it's the one from Google. That's the photo booth app was written with Kendo. But as far as docs and stuff like that, I mean, they're various. I mean, I would say Sencha and Kendo UI are they're up there for the features, that's for sure. Just depends on what you like, So
yeah.
I would say that try both.
Yeah.
I know it sucks. I'm trying to give you an honest answer.
Yeah.
I could be the douchey guy and say no to him.
If you're doing it yourself and you're just going to hit the docs and do a Kendo easy point of entry, if you did a 1-week course or a 3-day course, essentially you'd be up to speed within a few days. That's the preferred way to do it. I guess. If your boss has a timeline. Same, you guys will have courses somewhere.
That's actually where we fall down. We don't have good training, in-person training. So we do have courses on Pluralsight and online courses. So we fall down there a little bit. Just the nature of the beast, I guess. We don't have that many people, and we haven't been around as long, I guess. When it comes to Kendo, though, we have a lot of customers in the .NET space, so that's where our strength lies, because we're traditionally known there. But we've edged into the Java and PHP sides of the house. But our domain expertise is in .NET historically, so take that for what it's worth.
Anybody else? No? There's still a couple of beers left, I think. Is that correct? Yes. A couple of beers left. Do you have any questions from the other members or anything? Oh, I mean, yeah, I should hand over to them. I'm an MC now. Look at that. Look how fancy it is.
So the plan was that ideally the talks were going to be short, but we were blessed with nice long talks. So rather than having a panel, if you want to grill any of the speakers or anyone else, stick around and have a drink with us. Otherwise, feel free to go. Thanks for coming to Meld Mobile. Hopefully we'll catch you at the next meetup. If you like JavaScript, as was mentioned at the start, definitely come along to Meld.js, which I organize with some other people. Yeah, we're second Wednesday of every month, so we're coming up on the 11th of September. 4 great talks, free entry, beer and pizza. Come along. But otherwise, that's it. So thanks for coming, guys.
Cheers.